Hello again, baseball fans, and welcome into episode number 17 of Ducks on the Pod. Great to have you along, as always. I'm in a good mood this week. It might have just been a good day at work. It might be that my birthday's on Wednesday. Regardless of the reason, I have no negativity on this episode. Sometimes I get on here and I rant and I rave and I throw up my arms and basically sound like an old man for a half an hour. Well, that's not the case this week. I have nothing but good things to say. And our good friend Ham Porter's here to start us off. Starting us off in the first segment here, it's got to be the guy who's grabbing all the headlines in baseball right now, Giancarlo Stanton. Let me start by saying I was supremely confident at the All-Star break that at least a couple of guys would reach the 50-homer plateau this summer. Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger have since showed us that they are, in fact, human. The two rookies have slowed since the Derby, but the man who was supposed to show out in his home park during that event seems to have taken his loss as a challenge. In baseball's unofficial second half, Giancarlo Stanton has been absolutely locked in. In 29 games, a cool 302, 413, 849 triple slash, 17 homers, and 35 driven in. Yeah, that'll do. He's homered in 5 straight and 9 of his last 11 games. He's got 10 in August, and we're only halfway through. Most importantly, the Marlins are actually winning these games. It's not like Stanton's putting up these monster numbers in vain. He has been scalding hot lately and rightly getting the attention for it, but it's been a whole season of top-notch production for Stanton. 68 of his 122 hits have gone for extra bases. That's 56%, and that's nuts. Now, back on July 19, I was watching the finale of a Phillies-Marlins series, and in the first inning, Stanton crushed his 30th homer of the season deep to straightaway center. You almost couldn't see the ball come down, and if you check out Odubel Herrera watching it the entire way out, he's thinking, where is this baseball going? It impressed Odubel, it impressed me. I started tuning in for more and more of Stanton's at-bats, and almost as if he knew I was watching, he did not disappoint. This stretch has totally changed my perspective on Giancarlo Stanton. I used to think of him as one of the more overrated players in the game. People rave about how far he can hit a baseball, and yeah, sure, he is up there in terms of brute strength. That's fine, but they count the same as a wall scraper. Now, Stanton's not just hitting balls deep into the bleachers, he's doing it with more regularity. He's not just smacking dingers, he's driving in runs, and he's putting together good at-bats to help his team win ball games. I used to really hate on the guy, but Stanton has turned me into a fan. And thank the baseball gods, we got someone who's going to swat 50 big flies this summer. The last time that happened was in 2013 when Chris Davis did it. Before that, it was Jose Bautista in 2010. 50 is the number for me now. If a guy hits 50 homers, wow. I mean, it's just unrealistic to expect anyone to get to 60 anymore. 40 is too pedestrian. A lot of guys can do that. 45 isn't round enough. It's not a nice enough number. 50 homers is such an accomplishment. It's such a round number. It's just nice to see. If a guy gets to 50 homers, that's really something. And that's going to be the number, I think, going forward. As we transition into this era of elevated swings, guys are trying to hit the ball out, but they're not behemoths anymore. They're beasts. Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, these guys are jacked, no doubt about it. But they're not Mark McGwire, all right? And there's a difference, and you can tell. So cheers to you, Giancarlo. Baseball needs a 50-homer season more often than it's been getting them lately. It's good for the game, and right now, so are you. The Los Angeles Dodgers are coming to town for my birthday weekend. They're the best thing in baseball right now. By the time they get to town, they very well may be 50 games over 500, if you can believe it. I said there's no negativity in this show, but I am a little bummed because Clayton Kershaw has a bullpen scheduled for Wednesday. He will not be back in time for the weekend. Alex Wood goes tonight on Tuesday. Darvish on Wednesday. They've got a weird week, the Dodgers. Off Monday, Shy Sox for 2, off Thursday, and then into Detroit for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I'm going to be stuck watching Rich Hill, Hyunjin Ryu, and Kenta Maeda. Good pitchers, but nowhere near as exciting as Kershaw, Wood, and Darvish would be. Still, the Dodgers are so good. I'm really looking forward to watching them sweep their way through Detroit this weekend. Corey Seager is one of the leaders in this new age of the shortstop that I talked about a little bit earlier in the season. He's an exciting five-tool guy whose game seems to be best appreciated in person. Can't wait to see him live because he makes difficult plays look routine, and I'd love to see him take infield, actually. Hopefully I'll get down to Comerica Park early to watch that. Yasiel Puig is back and playing under control after having some difficulty with that. He's having a good season to show for it. He's probably the most unpredictable player in baseball. It's hard to imagine what he's going to do next because he simply has so much more athleticism than we normal beings. We can't totally wrap our heads around what he's capable of. Baseball needs more of that. Unfortunately, that kind of goes against a lot of what baseball stands for. You saw Puig rubbing heads with a lot of the veterans in the Dodgers clubhouse a few years ago when he came up. He's learned to control himself, taper it back a little bit, and use it at the appropriate times. And it's really been fun to watch his career progress this year. After the last couple of seasons looked like he might actually just be a super talented guy who couldn't get it together. He finally is, and it's been very fun to watch. Can't wait to see him. Of course, Cody Bellinger is the wonder kid. I am geeked to watch him launch a couple balls into the right field seats. He'll almost assuredly continue a long line of Dodgers to win the Rookie of the Year award this year. Chris Taylor was a nobody last year. He has more at-bats this year than he did in his first 3 years combined. He began to get some playing time because the Dodgers were injured, and they really had no other options. He's stuck in the lineup because he's become irreplaceable for them. He and Bellinger have been the most pleasant surprises in the game, and they're huge reasons why the Dodgers have been so untouchable the last 3 months. Yasmani Grandal is one of my favorites, going back to his days at the U. Justin Turner has a great story, another guy who kind of came out of nowhere and carved out a spot for himself. Since coming over to L.A., he's been one of the top contact hitters around. Jock Peterson having a bad year, but he's still a fun player to watch and one of my personal favorites. I already mentioned the starters. The relievers, just as good at their job, led by Kenley Jansen, he of the .67 whip and 1.20 ERA. Opponents are hitting just 160 against him this year. He's K'd 80 batters in 52 1/3 innings. That is unreal, and I got to make sure I find a good spot to watch him go to work. There are others on the roster I'm a fan of, too. We could run down the whole roster, really, but we'd be here a little bit longer than we want to be. Hell, even Dave Roberts has skyrocketed himself into my top 5 of skippers in just his second year in the position. There is a link in the notes to a piece about how epic an Astros-Dodgers World Series would be because it would put Houston's phenomenal offense up against LA's amazing pitching. Give that a read because that might be where we're heading. So the Dodgers are in town this coming weekend, but this past weekend, I had the privilege of watching a weekend set between the Tigers and the Twins. Now, the Minnesota Twins, I tweeted this out, I believe it was Saturday's game I was at. They're an exciting bunch for the first time since 2010. With guys that really maybe you haven't heard of, but they're young and they can play ball. Let me tell you, the charge was led by a guy that I really had no awareness of until this past weekend. Eddie Rosario went 7 for 13 on the weekend. 3-run homer Friday night, 2-run shot Saturday night, scored twice on Sunday, but he actually impressed me most in the outfield on Sunday in the second inning. James McCann lined one towards the left field corner. Rosario covered probably 40 to 50 feet with ease, got the ball before it got to the warning track, spun and fired a strike into second base. McCann had to settle for a single. It's a play you rarely see made as smoothly as he did. It stuck out to me, and then I looked at his offensive numbers. I was not expecting to see 296, 337, 503. He did not look like a guy who'd have 16 long balls on the year, but he does. Eddie Rosario had a hell of a weekend in Detroit. You never hear his name, and I thought he deserved some credit. So there you go. Keep your eye on the Twins' Eddie Rosario. I sure am. Two other guys you may have heard of that I've certainly heard of coming into this weekend. Miguel Sano, he hit a big fly and plays a lot better at third base than I thought he would. He's a big dude, so it was kind of impressive to see him move around the hot corner the way that he did. And, he moved back to first base on Sunday. He can definitely handle the glove, which is good to see from a guy with such a powerful bat. You hate to see them restricted to that DH first base role. Sano, clearly a guy who can play both corner positions. That's only going to help him as he continues his career. Got to learn to cut down on the strikeouts, but that's all right. Another guy who's no slouch with the glove and needs to cut down on the strikeouts, Byron Buxton. He's been a top prospect for a couple years now just because of the sheer athleticism that he has. He can cover center field with the best of them. Saw him range back to his right onto the warning track in Comerica in left center field, which is a big area out there. Covered it with ease on multiple occasions. He dropped a nice squeeze bunt down there on Sunday. Actually got the game-winning hit in that game as well. He's still trying to figure it out offensively and string together the consistent at-bats. But I liked what I saw from him, and he is going to be a big part of this Minnesota Twins team as they continue to grow up together. Might not be the top prospect that everybody thought he was a couple of years ago, but hey, they can't all be Mike Trout, right? So those three guys, Eddie Rosario, Miguel Sano, Byron Buxton, keep your eye on them as the Twins try to still compete, but they probably won't. So if you're going to watch a Twins game, keep your eye on those three guys. Best of luck to them. Before I get out of here, I wanted to pass along this list of ironic jerseys. I saw this a couple of weeks ago and thought that I had to share it. I'm a jersey guy. I think when done correctly, you can look very sharp with a jersey on. Unfortunately, most guys look like bums when they have one on, so it becomes somewhat of a faux pas. If you know me, you know that I don't often do what everyone else is doing. My jersey collection is no different. What's the point in having the same gear as so many other people? I love those obscure jerseys that make you think. This is a list of those. Some of my favorites. Pedro in Philly pinstripes. Don't forget, he pitched in that 2009 World Series. Bo Jackson back in the day with the California Angels. Babe Ruth's Boston Braves jersey that he wore only 28 games before retiring in 1935. Kenny Lofton is one of those guys who has nothing but ironic jerseys. He was a great player, arguably the best to do what he did when he was doing it, but he bounced around so much it doesn't feel like he has a true home. Bartolo Colon is kind of similar in that respect. Edwin Jackson certainly fits the bill with much less success, obviously. Who's next? The Hit King played in Montreal, and I'd love to have one of those ugly blue things with rose on the back. Mike Piazza was a Florida Marlin for about 5 minutes. That would be a super rare find. Greg Maddux was one of those guys who just kept pitching effectively. As a result, his stint with the Padres coincided with San Diego's experimentation with that weird beige-like color on the road unis. That'd be a very unique one to have in your collection. Manny Ramirez played for the Rays briefly. I had actually forgotten about that. And my favorite ball player of all time, Ken Griffey Jr. He's the only player I can think of who'd compel me to wear a Chicago White Sox jersey. There are plenty more. I'm sure you've thought of a couple already. Send me some of your favorites and we can make a list of our own. that's going to do it for episode number 17 of Ducks on the Pod. Thanks so much for listening. Remember to rate, subscribe, review, share with all your friends. And until next time, baseball fans, remember the 3 keeps of baseball. Keep your glove on the dirt, your bat off your shoulder, and always keep your eye on the ball.
Back, gone.